activate, relax. Lower, ease back, elongate, shape. These are the simple commands that I'll give and the things I think for myself when I'm working on actually creating the false chord scream. Now I'm going to get into some detail here with that and how this is going to work and how we're going to activate the sound. Like I said in the previous video, we're going to start to move these bigger mucous membranes above the vocal cords and start to use them, incorporate them into how we're making sound, and just sprinkle that on top of what we already know. Now, like I mentioned at the end, we want to think of other types of animals that can also make sound and have similar voice boxes to ours. My mind always goes to dogs. If I were to tell you guys at home, bark like a dog, you could just roof, roof. Do it. Try that on your own at home. Bark like a dog. Go, go, go. And that's enough. You'll notice the sound is really big and explosive. If it's not, you might be kind of pulling back a little bit. That will happen sometimes if you're not used to making louder sound, or if you aren't a very loud person when you speak. This might take a moment to settle, but the less you think about it, the more likely the sound is able to just pop right out. Again, bark like a dog. All right. Ruff, ruff. Now, this happens, and we're able to emulate this because dogs have a similar voice box to our own. However, it's just not nearly as sophisticated. They have vocal cords, just like we do, but they're kind of bigger and they're dumber, and they collide in a more impactful way, and it's not as clean, and it's not as precise, and it's not just connecting in one spot, it's connecting in many. And this is what creates overtones. Overtones for all types of distortion is entirely the name of the game. And that is ringing true here for the false chords as well. Now, when we go to bark like a dog, ruff, what's happening is it's not just the vocal cords moving. Suddenly, the false chords have been activated, and we're using them to gain that extra distortion and add those overtones to the sound we're already making. Now, you don't really have to think about this in the moment, because if you can create that sensation in the throat for yourself and just think of the sound, they'll come together and vibrate against each other as well. And the vibration of the false chords isn't sophisticated like the vocal cords underneath. It's bigger, it's dumber, it's less precise, it's in more than one spot. And this is what's creating not just one tone, but many. Hence the sound. Hence the overtones, hence the size of the sound. Ruff! However, a lot of people stop here. We want to refine this sound a little bit, because when you're imagining this sound, it's very explosive. There's a lot of energy. It's very punchy, and it's very impactful. And if you continue to hammer away at the voice like this, it will get tired. And even though this is already pretty well balanced, you can still wear yourself out pretty quick if you don't scale back on the overall attack on the sound. You don't want to think of the false chord scream as a punching bag, if that makes sense. Now we're going to bring down the energy. We're going to reduce the energy a bit here. So we're going to take the dog bark, ruff, and I'm going to scale it back. Ruff, ruff. Hear how the sound calmed a bit, but it also grew. It expanded. I'll go again. Dog bark. Ruff. Reduce energy. Ruff. Suddenly it's a little bit more manageable. Now we need to continue to expand this sound. Remember what I've said before about the act of yawning. What the yawn actually is. Oh, you can feel the larynx. Move out of the way and totally open your windpipe to make sure that the body can oxygenate as quickly and effectively as possible. If we take that same concept and apply it to the dog bark, what's going to happen is the same thing that happens with our melodic voice, with our vocal cords. The extra space will give the sound more room to resonate, and therefore not only deepen the sound and widen the sound, but create more sound overall without any added force of any sort. Now I'm going to add that to what we're doing here with the false chords. Dog bark. Ruff. Relax. Ruff. I'm going to lower with the yawn. Ruff. Notice what just happened. It's deeper, it's fuller, it's bigger, but I didn't force it beyond what I was already doing in balancing my air pressure. Ruff. Ruff. You can see me lowering my larynx ever so slightly, but I'm only doing it that tiny amount that's done when we yawn, which is a naturally occurring motion, rather than just clamping down and tightening in the bottom end of the voice. That's what you want to avoid. If it seems like the sound is drying out, the larynx is either choking up, kind of like when you cough and cutting off the sound, or it's clamping down and kind of having the same effect. So you want to make sure it's balanced, and all of these adjustments are very slight. You want to start kind of nudging it in one direction and nudging it into another until you can find that sweet spot where the maximum amount of sound lives with the minimum amount of effort to get there. Dog bark. Ruff. Scale it back. Ruff. Lower it. Ruff. That's the first 3 steps. Now I'm going to balance it even further. I'm going to ease back the energy again. Ruff. Bigger, fuller, but less energy behind it. Ruff. Now I'm going to slow it down. Now I'm going to focus on trying to expand the sound with what I know about how to get notes to resonate more. If I can relax and balance differently, versus I can create healthier sound and more of it. And I'm going to apply that to the false chords. The same thing happens. I'm continuing to scale back and readjust, but the sound itself is continuing to grow. Contrary to popular belief, I'm not just squeezing and squeezing and squeezing to get to this point. If I were to do the opposite and use just sheer brute force and muscle my way into the sound, I would find that the sound gets very cut off. Again, the more space we can create and the more relaxed the body can be, the more sound we're going to be able to generate. Now, again, leading back to my list of words. Activate. Ruff. Relax. Ruff. Lower. Ruff. Ease back. Ruff. Elongate. Ruff. Shape. Ruff. Suddenly you have something. The simpler the command can be in your head, the quicker your body's just going to understand the motion and be able to fall right into place. You don't want to overthink these motions when you're doing it. We want to be careful with how we balance, but in the moment, just focus on these single words and work on just getting the sound out. Now, in the beginning, this sound might kind of pop out for you by surprise. You might be surprised at how quickly you're able to get this dog bark sound shaped into these other things. But that doesn't mean it's going to be consistent right away. The body isn't going to get used to this overnight. This is a very different kind of motion using parts of the body and parts of the throat, parts of the larynx that we're not used to using in this way. So it's going to take some time to adjust. We need to practice regularly everything we just did up until this point to start to show the body that it's okay to make these sorts of sounds. I usually recommend that people practice this either every day or every other day, depending on how you feel. This changes from person to person. You want to listen to yourself, listen to your body. When you're working on this on your own and making these sounds, if it's coming out consistently, great. Practice it for maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes tops. Less time in the beginning because we're just working on adjusting to it first before we then make it usable later. if it starts to get tight and you notice that dry feeling like I was talking about, where the larynx is either too high or too low and you're clamping into the sound or squeezing into it, just take a moment, take a breather, step back, relax, go do something else for a little bit, let a little bit go by, come back to it. If it starts being consistent and doesn't sound or feel bad anymore, great. If it keeps being difficult in the same way and you seem to be unable to move it around, just listen to yourself and take the rest of that day off with that type of vocal. Pick it up again the next day, or if it's feeling a little tender, the day after. Base it on what you think is best. Now, slight tenderness is totally normal because we're using a new part of the body. Just like when you start to go to the gym or you start to run, or maybe you're swimming for the first time in a season, you'll notice that different parts of the body will be sore. That's true here as well. You want to make sure that it's just not pain. And you'll be able to know right away the difference. If you notice any kind of interruption in your speech or intense heat that doesn't go away for longer periods of time, that's what you want to be careful of. But as long as you're balancing the sound and not pushing as hard as you can, you're not very likely to get to that point, which is especially why I'm only having you guys do this for about 10, 15, 20 minutes at a time for now, until your body catches up to what we're doing, and then we have the endurance trained up to be able to take this sound and move it into other directions. So go ahead and work on this type of stuff at home, and then when you're ready, we'll be moving on to the next step.